Good evening from New York. I'm David Schuster. Keith Olbermann has the night off. At perhaps no other moment during the 2008 presidential election did the choice between the candidates look more stark. In September, Arizona Senator John McCain pretended to suspend his campaign and threatened to bail on the first debate. Also, he could solve the economic crisis. Barack Obama's campaign said the then senator from Illinois believed a president should be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. Our fourth story in the countdown, Mr. Obama, now President Obama, is following through by juggling multiple items on his agenda. It's the new Republican talking point. Obama's critics ask whether the president is doing too much during his first 100 days. Stem cells, health care, and today education, instead of doing one thing to the exclusion of all others, reviving the economy. Senator suspend his campaign himself told Politico in an interview that while he does not want Obama or his administration to fail, quote, they're just sort of lurching from one crisis to another, and that's the perception the American people have. Republican Senator Arlen Specter added to the sense of doom when he said, quote, our economic problems are enormously serious, more serious than is publicly disclosed, and I think we're on the brink of a depression. President Obama's Republican Transportation Secretary Ray LaHood fired back at charges that Obama's economic policies have made the recession worse. He told the Huffington Post that Americans who have been put to work by the stimulus plan, building bridges, repairing roads, are thrilled to have those paychecks. Yesterday, White House Press Secretary Robert Gibbs said that to focus only on the economy would be like telling firefighters to point their hoses at just the living room as the rest of your house burns to the ground. Today, Gibbs defended education as an equally important room in Obama's proverbial House of Policies.
I think most people in America understand that unless we educate our children and create the workforce that's necessary and needed to support some of the industries that we hope will flourish in an economic recovery, it's going to take a highly skilled, highly educated workforce.
The president himself also defended his ability to juggle.
I know there's some who believe we can only handle one challenge at a time. They forget that Lincoln helped lay down the Transcontinental Railroad and passed the Homestead Act and created the National Academy of Sciences in the midst of Civil War. And likewise, President Roosevelt didn't have the luxury of choosing between ending a depression and fighting a war. He had to do both. President Kennedy didn't have the luxury of choosing between civil rights and sending us to the moon. And we don't have the luxury of choosing between getting our economy moving now and rebuilding it over the long term.
There is a lot to talk about with our political analyst, Howard Fineman. He's also the senior Washington correspondent for Newsweek magazine, whose book, The 13 American Arguments, has just been released in paperback. And Howard, good evening.
Good evening, David.
Howard, given how interconnected all the nation's challenges are, the rising cost of health care, how new scientific research could stimulate the economy, instead of asking whether President Obama is doing too much, should the question actually be, is he doing enough?
Well, David, I think the answer to that depends on where you are. I think among some of the establishment, whether it's here in Washington or up in New York on Wall Street or in the media, there have been questions about whether Obama is focusing enough strictly on the immediate problems of the economy. But I was over at the White House today. I listened carefully to Robert Gibbs' briefing, talked to White House officials, kept an eye on Obama today. They're very confident that they're doing this the right way, that they've got to deal both with the short term and the long term, and with a very broad focus, because it all relates to the future health of this society. And the other factor here is not only is he confident, and are his people confident, as I judge it, but if you read the polls, the American people, while they're worried about the economy, they right now have a lot of faith in Barack Obama as a man, as a leader, as a person of character, and they're going to go with him following this strategy so far.
Howard, if President Obama was the walk and chew gum candidate and Senator McCain was the one thing at a time candidate, and Obama won, doesn't President Obama have an obligation, if not a mandate, to juggle multiple things at the same time?
Well, speaking of mandates, how about a 6-point rise in the stock market today? Now, that's only one day, but that comes at a crucial time because I think, and as I wrote on Newsweek.com, I think among the establishment types, there was real panic and fear, and there still is. But this one-day tonic of the stock market helps a lot and gives him some breathing space. I'm sure a lot of people are saying, hey, if the stock market's going to go up like that in one day when he's chewing gum and walking at the same time, give him a whole case of Doublemint, give him all the Wrigley's, because at least for now it's working. And yes, if you look back at the campaign, Dave, and you remember this, they spent 1.5 to 2 years developing positions on a whole lot of issues. If you went to the website, it was very robust with specific proposals on a lot of things. They had a kind of government in waiting, government in exile for a long time before he was sworn in. So he's got a game plan off of that website.
Howard, we've seen Senator McCain at several points on the Senate floor essentially criticizing President Obama for not vetoing a stimulus bill that's got a lot of pork in it. Senator McCain again tonight suggested that the president is not bringing the change that he promised. What's Senator McCain up to, in your mind?
Well, a couple things. First of all, in absence of any other, and even though he lost big time last November, McCain is in certain senses the titular head of the party, not Michael Steele. That's number one. Number two, John McCain wants to run for the Senate again in Arizona, David, as you know. He probably is difficult to beat, but he could face a Republican challenge from the right. So he's trying to restore his partisan Republican conservative credentials. And to give him his due, he really does care about this earmarks business. There are more than 8,000 earmarks in that bill. Barack Obama said he wanted to end earmarks. And he's using the excuse that this is last year's bill to take a pass on it. So it's a mixture of politics and faith with John McCain.
We're only halfway through the first 100 days of the presidency. The presidency is only 7 weeks old. How realistic is it to hold the Obama administration accountable for the state of anything that was essentially found on its doorstep when President Obama took office?
Well, I don't think it's a question of whether it's realistic, David. I think it's the facts. I think people expect quick results. They voted for Barack Obama by a very large percentage in modern historical terms. They view him as a capable guy. He had a running start because essentially there was no government here for a month or two before he took over, and he had a lot of influence on the new Congress in January. They think he's effective and capable, the American public does, and they expect him to do a lot in a hurry, and they expect him to be effective. On the other hand, if you look at the polls in terms of his personal approval rating, I think they're going to be patient for a while. And Obama is an unusual combination of energy and patience. Energetic, but also, looking back to the campaign, patience, long-term planning. That campaign was planned over a 2-year period, and he executed it beautifully. I think the American people are crossing their fingers and hoping that as well as he ran the campaign with a long-range plan, he'll have one for us and the economy as well.
Howard Fineman of MSNBC and Newsweek. And Howard, great to see you as always, and thanks for coming on.
Thank you, David.